Is real competitive out there, y'all, right? Real competitive, hard to get a deal. So Jason, tell us, what are you doing in this competitive market to get some deals?
So what has worked really well for us, especially just even from the start, is we've been really hyper specific and focused on our markets and our sub-markets. So we've making sure that we weren't looking at a massive landscape. So just like now we're in Murfreesboro, we've gotten very specific on where we want to be, so we can be quick to act when an opportunity comes up in front of us. Many times we get ourselves too spread out on many things in life, and so it takes us a moment to size into an opportunity when it comes in, because there's a lot of questions to ask. But the person who's being very specific in what they're looking for can act very quickly and is going to beat you to the punch. The other piece of the puzzle is we've really implemented a lot of direct to seller. So we don't have to go out into that competitive nature of really having to be out to the market, because we've done a very good job going after opportunities here and looking at our buy box and scaling that back where it's not 100 plus, where a lot of those sellers are going to say, yes, I'm going to go to market, where we brought opportunities anywhere from 24 to 90, where we're able to get directly in front of the seller, actually. And of our 6 transactions last year, 3 were direct to seller.
Interesting. So it's like you've created your own blue ocean.
In our own light, yes. And now, is it going to be the easiest thing to get in front of sellers? No, but we usually, for me, I anticipate that of like 7 to 10 deals we do, 7 are going to come through some kind of broker connection, and the other 3 are going to come from our connections, right? So whether it's through a property manager, through a friend, direct to seller. But if you're very specific what you want, right? So hey, I want to go buy a car. Well, who can help you? But if I want to go buy, a blue Chevy Tahoe, then I start seeing it everywhere, and other people can help me find that. It's the same thing with the property.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned it's not the easiest, right? But that's why it works, right?
Because everybody says you can't, right?
That's right.
And everybody says you can't.
Yeah.
Well, then, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got a question for you, Jason. I feel like the direct-to-seller route is one that's highly touted, obviously. Like everyone's trying to do it.
Everyone
wants to do it. It's
right.
like a calling card, but you do it to varying degrees of, obviously, success.
Yeah.
Is there anything that what's the secret sauce?
Testing.
That you want to share?
Testing, right? Testing. Also, we have partners that are very thorough coming from the flipping side, right? And so that's one kind of conversation, one kind of marketing. And then typically, if you think about it, if you've ever done wholesaling or flipping, and you do direct to, of course, seller, right? That homeowner, it could be a couple different sides of the conversation. But typically, there's a warm conversations coming in because you're going to talk to another investor. And if the opportunity may be right, you can think of a lot of reasons maybe why they would. Maybe they've owned a property for 20 years. They don't want to let their staff know they're selling, and they want something quiet. They want something to go quickly, right? So from that fact, that direct to seller is going to work for them. But it's not going to work for everybody, right? And that's why it's a consistent play. And we're not saying, I would be foolish to say this is our only route, because there's no way, right? We couldn't fill it enough unless we were looking to have some kind of unpredictability to it. But consistent approach has given us some inside tracks to some nice properties. But we've also been realistic, like could we get larger properties? Potentially, but as we go up in size, it's going to be less and less easy, right? Because the layers of people we have to get through, it's going through, some registered agent 17 states away. Probably not going to route it back to the seller.
Yeah.
So,
George, I want to turn it over to you. Tell us, because you're doing acquisitions and you have a construction business, right?
Correct.
So tell us, in this competitive environment, what are you doing to get deals, and have you shifted your strategy at all?
We've definitely shifted some. I think with real estate, you've always got to be willing to shift with the market. One of the things we got 2 things kind of driving our acquisitions and how to get deals in this type of market. One is we've been leveraging the fact our track record in closing deals. We've branded ourselves in a sense where the brokers and just others in the industry know we might not be the highest bidder, but we're going to close. So we definitely leverage that to get deals. Sometimes when a deal's falling apart, that's kind of when we step in and we get it at a lower price. And then the other one is other investors. So as far as spreading out our acquisitions, we're always looking internally, but at the same time we partner with other investors. We coach them on how to underwrite deals, so they know what we're looking for, and we pick specific areas that we want to be in and grow, and that's really helped.
Love that. And so do you find that having both sides, the acquisition and the construction, is that a benefit in this? I mean, construction is in high demand.
Right, so I didn't even mention that part. So yeah, we've gotten into deals just because of the construction company and people knowing that, especially heavy lifts. You know, if something's, we closed on a multifamily that was 100% vacant, there wasn't a lot of buyers looking at that. So yeah, it's definitely helped.
Yeah, it sort of expands your capability rather than necessarily trying to pinpoint that perfect deal, but then if you can't control the deal, you expand your capability, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about strategies to expand your deal flow. So now, I know it can be tempting when it's ultra competitive out there to say, okay, well, let me just go after a bunch of markets, right? Okay, well, rather than just one market, I'm gonna go after this one and that one and that one and that one and that one, just in case, right? I'll just spread out, find a bunch of brokers, and surely I'll get more deal flow, right? So Tyler, I want to turn it over to you because I know that proximity and economies of scale are a big part of your strategy. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I think focusing on an area that you know very well as if you have assets there, I mean, kind of like you mentioned, you've been very hyper niche in your target markets, is arguably one of the biggest things you can do in a competitive market like we're seeing right now. I mean, it gives you so much more optionality for ways to get a deal done, whether that's, you know, for us in the self-storage space, there's some fixed costs and there's also some costs that can be, you know, reallocated or spread across. But I mean, if we can share payroll with 2 facilities, whereas another investor or buyer, you know, needs a full payroll to that facility, at, you know, $30,000 a year, that's an extra $600,000 in buying power that, you know, we may have because of our existing infrastructure that another buyer may not. So like, that just gives us a much more competitive advantage that other buyers who aren't in the market won't have. Same thing for, you know, market knowledge. As I think John Chang showed, what is it, 20% or something like that was the appreciation in storage over the last, you know, couple of years. A lot of that is due to a tremendous amount of rent growth. If you're not familiar with the market, you may slap on 2, 3, 4%, which, as a lot of people mentioned today, is substantially below even the inflation rate. But if you can look to your existing assets in the market when you're underwriting a new potential property and demonstrate, yeah, we can actually drive 25%, 30%, whatever it is, and we've done that successfully, and the whole facility didn't move out, it was only 1 or 2%, that just puts you in so much more of an advantageous position on the acquisition, understanding your number, having the most competitive offer, as well as obviously market understanding, and there's some wherewithal between the seller and you when you're looking at purchases.
Yeah, that's such a great point because when you're underwriting, right, there's so many assumptions that you have to make. And when you focus on a few key markets, you don't have to make assumptions. You have the proof of concept, right? And then you already know with these other properties in the area, this is what we're getting. Let's plug in those numbers. And plus, I bet your investors, because they're familiar with those markets, and it's not like you have to do all the legwork of introducing new markets to them too.
Absolutely. I mean, the market familiarity is a huge thing for us. I mean, as Chris said earlier, that storage is a commodity business. It's not like we're wooing people to the site because of a fancy new sign or swimming pools or workout rooms or a lot of stuff that the multifamily guys do. It's really just dependent on the demand and the convenience of the surrounding area. So while some new investors may think, oh, this market is way oversupplied because of a number on paper, we've been in it, we know most of the facilities, we know the occupancy of them, we know there's strong demand. It just helps us internally as well as our investors externally just to be really familiar and comfortable with the property.
Yeah. Jason or George, do you want to weigh in on that? Are you guys focusing on specific markets or are you sort of spreading out a little bit?
We're spread pretty thin, but at the same time, we spend a good amount of time before we jump forward into a new market. And totally agree with the assumptions. Like, rule of thumbs, we've completely thrown that out the window. Like, we want to know exactly what it's going to be, every cost, and that allows us to be more aggressive with our offers.
Okay, just because I know it's probably on everybody's mind here, what markets are you guys focused on? Let's just go down the line. Jason,
Sure.
what markets are you focused on?
Louisville, Nashville, Atlanta.
Louisville, Nashville, Atlanta. Okay, so you're now based in Tennessee, which means they're all within close proximity to you.
Which is great, but at the same time, I was in New Jersey, New York City, like for pretty much my whole life, and we were still investing, mainly in Midwest and Southeast. But just like you said, that was even more reason to be specific with our markets, because even like our OpEx and others, right? Like, so each market's going to have different push and pulls, right? And so if you know how the property's going to operate, again, it puts you in a good spot. So if I'm in, of course, Tennessee now, I understand everything from like the franchise fees to transfer taxes to tax assessments, things that the next group who maybe is looking at a wide landscape of markets, they're going to be slower to act in this competitive environment because they have to go figure all that out, all the pieces of the puzzle.
Has it made a difference? Because I've heard different things, right? You can do acquisitions from afar, right? But has it made a difference moving closer to the markets? Are you able to go out and meet with brokers, be on site? Has that made a difference?
That's definitely cool, right? Because like before, yes, like a lot of FaceTime compared to just getting on the phone. But even about 2 weeks ago, a property came up. We've been really highly focused on looking at development in Murfreesboro, because there's definitely supply constraint. The sewers overcapacity, so they've everything from reduced the amount of units you can put on for multifamily per acre. So it's been very hard. There's no rezoning allowed, so all of our multifamily is outperforming. So a property came up, right? It was a lot. It was already entitled. It had the sewer connection, which is not easily granted there, and we knew it. My kids play soccer across the street, so we were able to get it locked up that day, right? Instead of me being wherever I am in the universe trying to figure that out, and I probably would have missed the opportunity.
Yeah.
So things like that, yes, because again, we were very specific in what we were aiming for. And so when it came in front of us, as the world magically does for you, we were able to act.
Overburdened sewage problem. That sounds like a stink of a problem, huh? All right, zing. Okay, Tyler, tell us what markets you're focused on.
Certain markets in DFW, I mean, I can say DFW, but that's a country in itself. It's so big. So specific markets around DFW, East Texas, Atlanta, MSA are the three, and Georgia are the three biggest kind of players that we're at.
Gotcha. And let's talk a little bit about what led you to those markets. I know some of those are really competitive. How did you break into those markets?
So we followed the opportunity there over the last couple of years. As a company, we're fairly market agnostic, but we're more opportunistic. So we've just followed opportunity there, and as a lot of people probably know, one deal snowballs into a couple, and then you now have some market share, which helps the snowball accelerate. So there was definitely some thought put into those, high growth markets, stable. But it wasn't, we specifically focused those out before we ever had any property there.
Yeah, and Spartan is based here, right? So do you find, do you guys go out there to vet the properties? Are you guys flying back and forth to those markets?
Yeah, we're in the markets a lot, both from like a corporate headquarters perspective. Obviously on the acquisitions, we definitely want to be, rolling up our sleeves and walking around the property. We are never gonna conduct due diligence on an acquisition from afar. We're going to be in the market, but we are blessed to have great local folks who work for Spartan that are in these markets, as well as the routine once a month, once a quarter visit from someone from the Colorado office to all those.
Nice. And George, what about you? What are your markets that you're focused on?
So in the beginning, we were really focused on Texas, mainly DFW and Houston. Since then, we're still doing stuff in Texas, and I love the Texas markets. But we've moved a little further east and south. We've got Georgia, Carolinas. We've got a deal now in Florida, and we're really focused on finding more there. I know those are big states, but in Florida, focusing on the smaller cities that are experiencing a lot of growth, and then kind of the same in Georgia and the Carolinas, so the smaller markets, and then looking towards the Midwest. So like I said, we're spread pretty out there.
Yeah.
I did have something to add as far as
Yeah.
investing outside of your hometown or where you're based. So we actually started getting a lot of growth once we started investing outside. So I think one thing is emotions kick in when you're investing where you live, and everywhere else it's just data driven. Like, I'm just looking at the data. I do believe in gut feeling though. We go do visit and make sure the gut check is there, but it's mainly data driven. But when you're in your hometown, sometimes you just can't believe that things are selling for $150,000 a door in this area, and it's all emotions. I mean, if the data's there, it's there.
Yeah, it's such a good point. So, okay, you mentioned you started sort of in Texas, and then you expanded these markets, and now you're expanding into the Midwest as well. Tell everybody a little bit about when you're expanding into a new market, especially in this ultra-competitive environment. Where do you start? What do you do?
So first thing is, like I mentioned, data. So we want to make sure the data checks, there's population growth, the economy's diverse, and checks all those boxes. And then we dive into possibly, like I mentioned before, we have a lot of co-GPs and partners. So if we've got somebody boots on the ground, that definitely helps. Somebody that can keep an eye on it without us having to fly out there constantly. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the boots on the ground, I know a couple of you have mentioned that. Partnerships. Let's talk about partnerships, right? Because in addition to looking at different markets, you can also leverage partnerships to expand your deal flow, right? So George, share with us a little bit about how you're leveraging partnerships, and then you guys feel free to weigh in as well.
Yeah, so, when we to scale, one of the ways that I figured an easy way to scale is, one, you can build your internal team, which we're doing, but at the same time that we're doing that, we're also building these partnerships. And so they're looking for deals for us. They bring us a deal. We pretty much supply whatever else is missing. We can KP, we can bring the equity, soft cost, all that stuff. And then at the same time, we coach them on how we want to do that. So rather than hiring a bunch of regional acquisition directors, whatever you want to call it, we're partnering with them instead. And it's worked very well.
Yeah, sounds like it gives you a lot of flexibility as well. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Tyler or Jason, you want to add on?
We definitely have and try and cultivate those partnerships for sure too. I mean, obviously, one person or even a couple acquisition folks can't be everywhere.
Right.
And the market knowledge that some folks bring is stuff that we'll never know. So when we're in these markets, we're looking at some of these more targeted markets. Definitely try and preach to whoever we feel would be a great partner about like why Spartan's a good buyer on the back end. To try and continue to accelerate that deal flow just by local folks in the market. And we, obviously will, allow some co-invest or roll them in some capacity, or if it's a seller contributing equity for the land, very flexible and nimble, which I think you gotta be in today's day and age.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about timing, okay? So we all know hyperinflation, all-time high prices, very competitive, right? Is now a good time to acquire properties, or should people just sit out and wait this one out? What do you think, Jason?
I think we all have that story of like the grandma or like the great aunt who was like, I remember when milk was like 10 cents, right? And so we get caught in that parameter, just like George was talking about, like living in his town and just being like, I can't pay that, right? Because you get stuck. But if you stick to, we like our approach, and it's just being aggressively patient, right? We have a plan in place. We have our vision. We have our values in place. We're sticking to our parameters. We're being consistent with our approach. We're not reaching. We don't have to buy a deal, right? We're looking to continue to push forward with good opportunities. We're also looking at the risk return profile, right? There's a lot of reasons why this runway keeps going, but again, sometimes we think of like, we hear things and it's like, well, it's like talked about like the entire US, right? And so when you are, the different effects in different markets, so when you're thinking about being in different markets, there's going to be different reactions. And a reaction that happens in one market, may not be felt in another market for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So being very specific with what you want, consistently looking at how your underwriting is stacking up to really today in today's market. And do you have to adapt, right? And do you want to adapt, right? So, but I think sitting on the sidelines is definitely not the wrong, definitely if that's where you want to be, sure you can do that, but I'm not sitting on the sidelines. We're going to continue forward just with our plan and stick to our plan.
Yeah. Tyler or George, what about you guys? What do you think? Is now a good time?
I think if you're talking solely about inflation, it's a good time to buy. I mean, as a lot of folks saw, like Spencer Levy's presentation, real estate values do very well in terms as a hedge against inflation. So strictly on that point, I think it's an opportune time to buy. Capital demands coming to the market, you can make the argument both ways, whether it's a good time to buy. Obviously, with a lot of folks coming out of office and hospitality, they're flooding some of these other major food groups, which is driving prices, sky high. I agree with you, Jason, though. If you're staying patient, staying diligent, not placing capital just to place capital, there's still good buys out there.
Yeah. George, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. I think leaving money on the sidelines right now is a horrible idea. Everybody, with inflation, you're losing money, right? So you should definitely be putting it in cash flowing hard assets. And there's different ways to de-risk that in a sense. I mean, I've been through a down cycle, and so one thing that we stick to is anything we're purchasing right now, there's got to be a true value add component to it where I can force the appreciation, and I'm not just banking on the market in a sense. And we really stick to that. But yeah, keeping on the sidelines, I just don't see why.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, you guys heard it. Don't stop. Get out there. Get some deals. All right. Okay, so with that, let me ask you, for all these fine folks out here, let's give them some advice. Let's give them some tips, some concrete insights. If they're looking for deals out there, they're structuring their deals, what advice do you have to help them to win some deals? Anybody want to start?
I'm going to start? Okay. So I kind of mentioned this already as far as assumptions, and make some really good connections with your vendors so that you can get hard numbers on taxes, insurance, payroll, really sharpen your pencil on your underwriting. And then at that point, you should be able to feel a little more aggressive with your offers. On top of that, it's very still relationship based. Keep working on building those relationships. One thing I didn't mention was our vendors. We leverage that relationship with our vendors, and not just the brokers. I mean, property managers, attorneys. Sometimes they find out when deals are for sale, and then you got to be ready to move. Take action.
What do you do to build relationships with those folks? Do you take them out to lunch? Do you golf with them? Do you send them gifts? Like, what do you do to stand out?
Send them business.
Yeah,
That's the best way.
There you go. Send them business. I love it. Yeah, it's a win-win, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. Tyler, do you want to add on?
Long-term debt, short-term leases. I think in this inflationary environment, the ability to meet the market as often as possible is going to be super critical. I mean, a 5-7 year retail lease with like CPI increases capped at 3% every year, you're going to come out of that well behind the 8 ball. But if you structure your leases, whatever asset class it is, whether it's multi or storage or even retail or office, which historically have been a little bit of a longer lease term, if you can structure them when you can adjust the market rents as often as possible, I think that puts you in a really advantageous position. I just think rent growth, the forecast is going to be a make or break point on a lot of deals you're looking at. So being able to drill that in appropriately will put you in a much better position than just taking a guess.
Yeah, I love that. Long-term debt,
short-term leases.
Love it. Love it. Great tip. All right, Jason, bring us home. What else?
So I will go the opposite side from the actual nuts and bolts of it, is that being realistic with yourself, right? Is your business plan aligning with what you're doing, right? You're here, right? So you're in this for the long term. You're here to take action. Is the steps you're doing in your business right now, do they line up with that, right? Or are you using the narrative, oh, it's hard to find deals, it's hard to find, and just carrying off that deal, right? So it would be being realistic with myself, my vision, to say, am I taking the action upon my vision for where I want to go, right? Because we all get stuck in, looking at Instagram and being like, oh, that dude did awesome, not realizing it took 27 years, and it looks awesome right now, right? But in that fact, are we here for the long run? Because we were here for the long run, that's why we're here in this room, right? But is our goals and our actions aligned with that? Are we doing the piece of the puzzle, right? Or are we waiting for hopefully something to fall in our lap?
Yeah. Along those lines, right? Speak a little bit, because I know you're big on mindset, right? So tell everybody a little bit about the part that mindset plays in this whole acquisitions game.
Sure. So I'll talk to you about the 100-mile mindset, right? And so the easy fact is that, did dozens of marathons, right? That's easy. If you run a marathon, you run a certain amount of...
It's easy to do a marathon.
Certain amount. Well, you get for whatever it is. But there's a path, right? It tells you what to do. There's a marathon path. And like by the, a couple weeks out, you're running a couple 20-mile races to get yourself set up. But when you're running a 100-mile race, right, it's a lot like life. Like, it's not like I'm like, hey, honey, I'm going to go out and do like 2 80-mile test races today. I'll see you today or see you in a couple hours, right? So when you're out there in this, on your path, when you start this race, you don't know what the end's like. But we get so focusing on the 100 miles, and we get scared from the ledge. And so much as that is like us in life, right? We want that 100-unit building, but it's scary to us because we haven't done it. And so we get so stuck in that, we get paralyzed. So when I started these races, my goal was, okay, let me just get to the first aid station. Okay, so I got 5 miles in. Okay, cool, good. Okay, let me just get to the next one. That's 10 miles in. Okay, just figure it out, right? Let me get 20, 25 miles in, get to that next aid station. Good, I'm there. Okay, what do I need to do next? We'll run to the next one, right? And so you get to 50 miles or 60 miles, and maybe it comes down, like maybe you just let me just get to the bridge. Okay, I got to the bridge. Okay, and like if I don't feel like doing it, let me just get to that next step, right? And so maybe it's let me run another 500 feet, let me run another 200 steps, let me do this next part, and all of a sudden it's 100 miles, right? I'm at the goal. And that's so much what you can do in your real estate business. Sure, you have that goal, but you're gonna spend all the time in the journey. So the goal is there, but you gotta start taking the step, because the worst thing that happens is you sit there and do nothing, right? And then you get no feedback. But the other worst thing that happens is you take one step and you're like, man, that was not a good direction. Okay, good, at least I figured out what not to do, and now I can turn around and go the other direction, right? So action is good in moderation, but it's taking a step to learn what's that next question I have to ask. Because the most important things I've learned in my life, from everything from parenting to getting up at 4:32 a.m., is that I gotta go try it, and then figure out the next set of questions. Mm-hmm. And then the next set of questions I unravel, and it gets me to the next answer. And then each time I'm there, I learn a new step. Constant carried forward.
Love that. Love that. All right. Well, we're about to wrap up, but is there anything that we haven't covered here today that you think is valuable for everyone to know? No, we've covered it all.
You got it.
We've picked their entire brains. We've done all the insights, guys.
No, I mean, I think I wanted to make sure to mention the rent assumptions too, and you covered it. I mean, the rent growth we've had right now is not sustainable, and everybody needs to understand that and make sure they're not projecting off of those. I mean, even if you look at some of the CoStar projections, it's kind of through the roof. So that shouldn't be what you're banking on your pro forma.
One little trick that I've found, though, for the rent growth that I would recommend to everyone do, look at the REITs. I mean, the REITs have public data that they have to report on quarterly. They have, data in arrears, looking at, year over year rent growth based on projections, and then they put out their projections for the next quarter and year ahead of time that they're doing everything in their power to hit. So they may not hit it, but it's a good gauge of where their heads are at in terms of what they need to hit to achieve shareholder kind of happiness. And if you can just follow kind of behind that, even if it's 10 whatever it is, 1 or 2% less, you're still in a good position.
Oh, that's such a good ninja trick.
Yeah, I like that.
Right? Like, it's
Yeah.
like who, not how, right? Why do it yourself when here they are? They've already spent all this time and effort gathering that data, so you can just leverage it.
Follow the big money.
And they're out there for all asset classes, even single-family homes. I mean, there's going to be the big rent for use or whatever it is, and that data is out there and it's publicly available. You just kind of dig through some fairly boring K1 or 10Ks.
All right, well, I know we've just covered the tip of the iceberg. I know these guys are a wealth of knowledge. Definitely pick their brains further. If you see them in the halls, they're great guys. Definitely shake their hands, talk further to them. Tell us a little bit about how people can learn more about you and follow up. Jason.
Sure. So yeah, we're happy to be one of the sponsors, Seven Figure Multifamily. We got a great booth out there. As we mentioned earlier, we have a great event focused just on multifamily, of course, called Multifamily Live, coming up in Nashville, June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. You can use that QR code and get in there. We run some really awesome events. So it's at the Opry, just like at this one in Nashville. And that's it. Love to talk to you out there.
Love it. And I just noticed your socks. I'm not a Star Wars fan. Who's that on the
Mandalorian. I got some
Mandalorian.
traction earlier, right?
Mandalorian socks.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's part me rushing to get to the airport, part me just now. But I see it was the right move. Just like sometimes you got to take. It could have been the wrong move, but I didn't see. It's another lesson learned.
You're on top. I love a guy who's on top of his sock game. All right, Tyler.
Roll those.
Yeah.
No, we'll be around for the rest of the conference. We'd love to shake hands, say hello to everyone. The Hoover app's obviously a hot commodity around here. The website, Smartin-Investors, is where some more information can be found on us too.
Right. Excellent. And George.
Yeah, easiest way is our website is full of a ton of information how to contact us. It's elevatecig.com. I'm also, if you search my name on social media, you should be able to find me. Pretty active on there. And I know you guys are going to think that I'm not telling the truth here, but I was going to wear Baby Yoda socks.
So sweet.
And it would have been a little awkward up here, but I decided to go with no socks.
We're the best ever panel, but then we would have hit best ever panel. But
We'll have to coordinate better next time. I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Well, on behalf of everybody here, thank you so much for letting us pick your brains, sharing your insights, and being so open and honest and sharing all that you're doing. It's absolutely incredible. Help me give a final round of applause for these amazing guys, huh? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jason.